Okay, so as you all know, we have a lot of panel sessions today, with our first one coming up now. I'd like to introduce our speakers if they want to come on the stage while I introduce you. So the first session is The Future is Female, and our panel is going to be discussing how we can support more females into leadership positions and support them with their careers. So I'd like to welcome Anna Morrison, CBE, founder of Amazing Apprenticeships, Wendy Merricks, CEO of Jumar, Christina Jackson, Apprentice at AstraZeneca, and Faiza Khan, MBE, Executive Director of Corporate Affairs, founder of City and Guilds. Take a seat. I will stand. You guys have a seat. Okay, so let's start off with a few more introductions. Christina, if you want to start, and we'll go round. Introduce yourself, where you work. I think it's on.
Is it on? Yeah, perfect. Hello, everyone. I'm Christina Dumitriu Jackson. I'm a third-year apprentice at AstraZeneca. I'm on a chemistry pathway. So meanwhile, working full-time at AstraZeneca in Discovery Sciences, I'm working towards my degree in chemistry at Manchester Metropolitan University. I'm currently based in Cambridge, and within AstraZeneca and external to AstraZeneca, I'm a huge advocate for I&D, particularly for encouraging people from minority ethnic backgrounds into STEM. So yeah, that's me. It's great to be here today.
I think we need to give you a round of applause. I'm Faiza Khan, here from City and Guilds, Director of Corporate Affairs and Foundation. I'm not founder of City and Guilds because I'd be almost about 150 years old. So I'm looking pretty good for that, hey? What does that role mean? It means that I position the voice of people through City and Guilds that are able to go much further in life through access to skills, people like you and many, many more. And we know that even though we've been going for 150 years, we've got a lot more of that to do. So I'm delighted to be here, delighted to share some of the work that I know that's going on to help more women get further.
Hi, good morning. My name's Anna Morrison. I'm the founder and director of Amazing Apprenticeships. And we do two big things, I suppose. So we work with schools and colleges to raise awareness about apprenticeships. So working a lot with young people, teachers, careers advisors and families so that they understand how apprenticeships can be a fantastic option for them to consider and how they get into them. But then we also do a lot of work with employers as well, of all sizes, helping them to look at how they can use apprenticeships to diversify their workforce and to bring in apprentices at all levels, creating more opportunities for individuals, particularly those from less advantaged backgrounds. So great to be with you all this morning. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Wendy Merricks, and I'm the CEO of Jumar Technology. I left school at 16 with no qualifications, and I hadn't a clue what I wanted to do. But I fell into an apprenticeship in a tech business in 1981. I worked in all of the departments and still really wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do. But by the end of the apprenticeship, I decided that sales was what I wanted to do. And so my career has gone through 40 plus years of working in sales in technology organisations. And in the late 1990s, when I had my two children, I had them both in 1999, I decided to set up my own business because I was told that because I'd got children that I could no longer progress or be a manager in the business that I was in. And so being the determined young lady that I was at the time, I decided that I would just set up business on my own. And what I didn't realise was that it would actually turn into a real business. And so here I am, 23 years later, still running Jumar as a CEO. I very much support apprenticeships. It's how I started. We have quite a lot that come through Jumar. We have graduates that come through, and I really like to sort of sponsor particularly young people who come from social mobility backgrounds, which was really my background as well. So that's what I can give back to the community. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you all for coming today. I have some set questions to you, but I first want to maybe break the ice a bit with this panel starting as the futurist female. I wanted to ask kind of what does that mean to you? Maybe Christina, you start. You mentioned obviously being an apprentice, the future being female. You're in your early careers. What in 25 years or 20 years or however many years do you want to see from the future being female?
Yeah, thanks, Paris. So I think the biggest thing for me is representation. I think representation is really, really important. I can speak on behalf of my kind of experience. Really simple example is recently the Little Mermaid film came out, Disney film, and there was a huge kind of social media campaign of young black girls saying, oh, you know, like a Disney princess looks like me, which is something that I would have loved to see kind of growing up. And I'd like to see that when I look around the room in my industry as well. So interesting, shocking statistic from the Royal Society of Chemistry. In the UK, there is no black professors in chemistry, which is the space that I'm in, male or female. So I, in 25 years, would like to look around the room and see more people in STEM that look like me. So that's why I'm really, really passionate about access to STEM and seeing, you know, more people that look like me when I look around the room.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. What about you? Yeah, let's clap. What about you, Wendy? You mentioned obviously you started your business and now you're 20, 30 years down the line and you're the CEO. What has that 30 years of experience taught you with now the future generations to come for you, potentially females that are now in 2024 starting their businesses and will be hopefully like you in their 30 years?
Is this mic working?
Yes.
Yes, that's good. Yes, well, clearly when I started my career, I didn't really understand the impact that women, and particularly women in leadership, could have in the tech world. And agree with you around, you know, the STEM subjects. But what became really evident to me through the 80s and the 90s, because that was a very male-dominated industry, that technology and applications and everything that you use today were all designed, built and run by a very male-dominated sort of sector. And so, you know, those were, you know, sort of, you know, a lot of things sort of didn't have the softer touch and the different views of how sort of things could progress. What's been good to see in recent years is that by introducing and encouraging more women into tech, that you see now a lot of applications which are more user-friendly, have a better customer experience because you have different voices around the table. It's not gone far enough. There are still not enough women taking up STEM subjects. But as that improves as time goes on, then we will start to see a more sort of diversive and inclusive range of tech systems that will come along.
Yeah, amazing. And Faiza, what about you? Obviously, you're an executive director, corporate affairs and foundation, not founder, sorry, of City and Guilds. What specific strategies and initiatives do you think that organisations should implement to be able to advance women into senior leadership positions, given that you are now in one?
Thank you. So if I think about my career, I had a lot of breakthrough bosses who were women. Actually, I'd say Kirsty Donnelly, my current CEO, is one of those. She enables me to do my job as an exec director, but also be a mother. And I've got older parents as well that require quite a lot of caring. So that's quite a lot to juggle. But if I didn't have her support, that would be very hard. So I think on a very practical level, not to underestimate the not being judged. I remember pre-COVID, you know, you'd kind of do the odd working at home day and people used to think, oh, are you know, doing the mum thing? Are you doing the director thing? You know, actually that was a thing. And I think we've come further through seeing pets, parents, kids on the screens as we all went into lockdown. It broke down some of those barriers. I think there's less judgment now, but it's still very tough. And I think having that environment where you can be you, don't underestimate that for women and don't underestimate that for ethnic minorities and other groups. It's incredibly important. And then in terms of practical strategies, I think holding yourselves to account. At City and Guilds, we do equal pay audits. We publish our gender pay gap. Of course, we need to. But we also put in place leadership programs. And I'm delighted to say we have more women on our leadership programs internally. We need to do more. We're not perfect. And actually being 150 years old, Kirsty's our first female CEO and Anne Lim is our first female chair. So it's taken a long time for us to start to break down barriers ourselves And I think we're aware of that and want to do more. In terms of other organisations, there's just such a lot you can do by opening up your perspective, actively seeking out talent. There's so much research that says women underestimate themselves. They may not spot their own talent. So actually that relies on others in leadership to go out and seek them and give them positions where they can take on the odd project they might not think they're up for, or put themselves forward for a job they might not think they're ready for.
Yeah.
I think it is all of those things that make the big difference. And it's not any one of those things. All of those things need to be there.
Definitely, for sure. And Anna, obviously, amazing apprenticeships. We love apprenticeships. I recently finished mine. Christina's in an apprenticeship. In what way would you say educational institutions and apprenticeships and things like that can really address the needs of women and like the future being women and apprenticeships, being able to support them in their careers, given that Amazing Apprenticeship does that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I set up Amazing Apprenticeships in 2015, but actually I set up my first business in 2010. And I was just thinking when you were speaking there about those role models and champions who kind of supported me along my career and said, go on that management course because that will be good for you, or come along to that training day, or allowed me to kind of put my hand up for an opportunity to get involved in something that perhaps I knew nothing about. And I think that's one of the kind of elements that we see with apprenticeships, isn't it? Because through the apprenticeship training programme, you hopefully are given a mentor, someone in your organisation who's going to be that champion. Doesn't matter if it's a woman or if it's a man, but actually someone who hopefully is going to kind of link those opportunities to the apprenticeship that you're studying and working towards and encourage you and be that person alongside you. That's something I try to do now in my business. So we actually, not by design, but we've ended up employing majority women. And what I try to do is always put myself in their shoes. So when someone joins the organisation, or if something changes within their family setup or their personal circumstances, I try to be really flexible and just be really kind. And so it's a family first policy always. We know the pressures, don't we, being working women, that if there's something going wrong at school and you're needed and there's an emergency, it's often the mum that gets the phone call first. Or if, all of those unexpected circumstances. And I think that's something my mum and my nan instilled in me. It's always family first. You drop it and we will cover for each other. But then we try to champion each other as well. And we try to take a lot of time in the business to celebrate achievements. And again, that's something I think that we see coming through apprenticeships, but not just apprenticeships. As women, we can always do more, can't we, to kind of pat each other on the back or help each other out. But I try to really make that a focal point in our business so that we're celebrating achievements as well.
Yeah, no, amazing. And you mentioned that in mentorship programs, I think having mentors is so important throughout your career. We have a question on how can those programs be structured to effectively support women, maybe potentially like Christina in male dominated fields, or potentially there's young women or women throughout their careers that want to get a mentor, but maybe potentially don't know how to go about it, or they're not getting on with their mentor. What advice would you give to that with the mentors that you've had throughout your career? Any of you? Open question.
Yeah, so like I said, I'm in a kind of interesting position in my career. There's not many people that necessarily look like me that I can look up to. There's not many people senior in my kind of industry or in my company that I can relate to. So representation is super important, but with that, sometimes you do need to take a step back and allow people who've had different backgrounds and different perspectives to mentor you and share their experiences with you. So something that I found really beneficial and was kind of pivotal in my career so far was reverse mentoring.
Yeah.
So me being mentored by a senior individual in my company who was a male, but he was absolutely amazing, and me actually mentoring him in a different sort of form, obviously not in terms of career, but just sharing my journey and my perspectives and my experiences. And that really gave him insight and was a huge eye-opener to him as to, that we do have a bit of a way to go with certain things. And it made him more of an advocate, more of a champion, and personally invested in the cause because of the relationship that him and I actually had. And then for me, it was great. I had great kind of career advice, and having a mentor as well as a sponsor. There's a slight difference there.
Yeah.
Having sponsors is really, really important as well. So yes, representation matters and it's amazing, but your mentor doesn't always have to look like you or have to have had the same journey as you is really important. Otherwise, I think you're blocking yourself off a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. I know Faiza wants to say something, but just on that, I did also, in my previous firm, reverse mentor 2 directors there. And I was an apprentice, so I was like, I'm scared, like what's going on? But actually, when you sit down and have a conversation with someone, you're all 2 people at the end of the day. And it's really useful because you have different experiences. And also being in that relationship with someone who doesn't look like you or doesn't come from a background, you can also learn about their culture. You can learn about their journey and they can also learn about yours. So yeah, I like that.
I mean, Paris, that's amazing because that's, again, equity sharing, isn't it? And I just wanted to very quickly say I've had a mentor for about 10 years now, and it's Lord Tony Hall. So he looks nothing like me. He was Director General of the BBC when I met him, and I was like, oh my God, it's Tony Hall. And he has done that for me without question for 10 years, always been on the other end of a phone. Now, I mention that because he's a man, he's some years older than me. We had nothing in common, and I thought, until I got to know him. And actually, he's pushed me at points of my career when I really didn't think I could take that next step. Significant points where I've then gone on to do things I wouldn't have done if he hadn't sat down with me maybe at a breakfast and said, hey, you can do this. And it's really interesting because you sometimes don't always need to, I really agree with you. It doesn't have to be someone like you. It can be someone who's very different to you but gives you that push.
Yeah, no, amazing. Thank you. All of you, what role do we think diversity and inclusion, for example, maybe diversity and inclusion, racial diversity, or specifically who are here talking about women, like the networks at corporate organisations, what role do you feel like they have in playing to be able to support women within their firms? Wendy?
And on the subject of the mentoring, I've had a mentor, and I just wanted to add to that even I have a mentor at the top, and even though I mentor people sort of below me, I think that two-way street is really important. But looking at the groups, I'm a member of a number of groups, and I encourage everyone in my organisation to join groups. And you've got LinkedIn groups, but there are lots of sort of female-specific ones that are available that really enable people to have a voice and be heard. And I think one of the issues when people are coming up from apprenticeships is that sometimes in a large organisation you can be a little bit invisible, and I think these groups give everybody the opportunity, and they should be asked, can we please have your view, because it goes back to having the input, because they're young, they're modern, they see things from a different perspective, but if they're actually given the platform in order to have a voice, then sort of businesses and leaders need to sort of listen and take that advice on board, because it can be really innovative, really, really innovative. And that's how you get all of the fresh ideas coming through. So there's lots of groups on LinkedIn, and certainly in the Birmingham area, external groups. But, even if you're an apprentice, if there isn't a group within your organisation, then take the lead and start one, because you would be really amazed on how many people would say, wow, that's fantastic. And then it sort of raises your own profile, but actually builds that confidence in you as a person that you are valued as a member of the team.
For sure. And I think as well, like on that, if there isn't in your organizations, Christina and I were talking before we started, like about networking and like external events that relate to both of Christina and I come from multicultural apprenticeship abroad. Shout out to that. But like, shout out to that. But like, networking within your industry and outside of your industry is so important. So like, could maybe each of you, if you could just share how like that's helped you throughout your career, and maybe the person that who's became a friend or a mentor that maybe wasn't in your industry or organization, but somehow has helped you without your career today.
Well, the only reason, I was so painfully shy when I was a teenager that the whole networking thing just didn't seem to be a thing for me. But it was actually a guy that I worked with in one of my first roles who encouraged me to get involved, and I observed him and he was a prolific networker, and he was somebody that I really looked up to, and I took a lot of my learning and training from him, and I realised that and it was always more prevalent when he had a problem or he was down or was having a bad day at work, and he would use his network to solve issues or to gain other views. And so that's what I've done, and I've instilled that in my two boys, and it's ridiculous. So we bought a house a couple of years ago, and the person that has provided us with the most links for trade, things that have gone wrong with the car, things that have gone wrong with the house, it's actually come from my sort of son, who said, oh yeah, I know a plumber and I know an electrician. And I just realised that he has observed me networking and then uses that skill just for life things, not just about work things. But when you do have a network, you do have to realise that it's not all about you taking. You have to give a lot. So networks are a two-way thing, and it's really, really helpful. And you'd be surprised how much people want to help when you need them.
Yeah, no,
but you have to give back.
For sure. Anna?
I would just add to that. I was thinking as you were talking, Wendy, having the courage to say, actually, I'm a bit stuck here. Can you help me? It's always surprising, isn't it? Or you might build it up to be a big thing, but actually when you reach out to someone, they're always so willing, so giving in their time, so generous in their time and wanting to help and support you. I love networking. I'm always out and about and kind of love connecting with people and hearing their stories. We spend a lot of time trying to amplify the stories of apprentices that we meet, and trying to use their stories to inspire others, apprentices of all ages, of all backgrounds, to try and show that diversity and breadth of opportunity. And then when I think about my network and the people who really support me, I've got like a network of mentors and peers whose opinions I respect wholly, and will reach out to them if I'm feeling stuck. Or they might just reach out to me. I got a text message off of one of my, I would call them my angels really, this morning, who just said, oh, so we did this week, and, hope it all went okay, and blah, blah, blah. And we had a little exchange because I was feeling a bit wobbly about something, and, and they're just there for you. Yeah. So that importance of putting in and getting back, it is a relationship. It's not just a transactional thing. And it can be a friendship as well that can grow, even though it's perhaps a professional relationship. A lot of those mentors will end up being friends, as you were describing with Tony, who, kind of will follow you and kind of really back you as you go through your career.
Yeah, no, amazing. I want to touch on a couple of points that you've all kind of mentioned. I'm assuming we've got 3 mothers here on the panel, and the future being female. We've got a career starts off, and it can be anywhere from like however many years. Anna and I were talking before this, and she mentioned a good statistic. I wanted you to touch on that statistic, but just on being in the career space and then having children and being a female and how that affects you. And you've all here had kids. Just if you could just share the statistic that you said to us, the having when we were talking about it, having a child impacts more.
There was something, I was listening to the radio, I'm going to be misquoting someone here, but it was kind of basically in I think it was the financial industry, that having a having a child as a woman can be more detrimental to your career progression than being accused of sexual misconduct as a man in the workplace. And that's really shocking, isn't it? And I'm really sorry if I've been misquoted or if I misheard that, but we'll get that checked. I really felt that pressure as a woman starting a family, so decided to start my own business in 2010, but then really wanted a family. So how do I do both and try and be good at both? And found it terrifying. So did have my daughter in 2016, was back at work within 2 weeks, and I'm not sure who I took my inspiration from, but I don't know if anyone remembers Carol from the British Empire back in the 80s, who kept her child in a drawer under the desk. I wasn't quite that bad, but Jemima would come into the office with me in the pram, and at just a few weeks old, if she woke up, I'd feed her, but I was able to carry on working and be in the office. And she now gets to see me as her role model, and how hard I work and what we're able to do. And I can talk to her about what it might be like to set up your own business and what would that be, and, what do you want to be when you're older? And obviously it changes on a daily basis, depending on what show or TV thing is going on. But I think that's so important, isn't it? And I will still have concerns. You know, am I being enough? I've left the house this morning. Someone else has got to take her to school. You know, she won't see me until tonight, and we feel that pressure, don't we? But this is how we can back each other, I suppose, and pat each other on the back and say, actually, we're doing a blooming good job, aren't we? So, and we're trying our hardest to ensure that the future is female, and that the young women and children that are following in our footsteps will have even greater opportunities than we had for ourselves.
Amazing.
Thank you.
I don't know.
So on the networking point, I just wanted to make a point back on that, and then got me here because I did the same thing. I ran to another mum's house this morning at 7, dropped him off. He's in his pajamas and she's feeding him and taking him to school, and that's Women Helping Women. And that's the backstory before you get on the stage, actually. And women do it all the time. So on the networking point, I was just reflecting. Growing up in East London, I grew up in Barking. Parents without any social capital. Very much you go to school, you come back. My parents didn't really understand the importance of other extracurricular activities. In fact, they were quite fearful of those. They didn't know who we might mix with and what was going. I mean, I wasn't even allowed to join the guides. You know, it was a very different time growing up in the 80s. And so when you find yourself then in a professional environment as an adult and you have to network, because you have to network. I'm in corporate affairs. I've been in public policy all my life, in my working life. So how do you then switch that environment of a very kind of sheltered upbringing, actually, to one when you're in Westminster and you're rubbing shoulders with MPs? Or have worked in grant making with independent family foundations. Again, a very wealthy, different world where social capital is available to people. So actually networking was quite hard for me to switch into, apart from the fact that I'm naturally quite friendly and gregarious and chatty. But I think it's very much harder if you're an introvert, and not to underestimate how hard it is for people to make that transition if they haven't grown up with the example you're giving now as a mother. It's really something I think we almost have to then engineer for people who don't have it, younger people in particular. So I just wanted to make that point, because I know I remember finding it hard when I first started doing it, and now not so much. But I wasn't brought up knowing how. So I think that's something to think about when we're trying to create networks, that we have to go the extra mile to welcome people in and to help them go over to that person in the room that's standing by themselves. You know, the small things you can do make a huge difference to someone who might look a bit out of place.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know if you wanted to add on that, or do you?
I'd say, just to build on that as well, you know, those are the sort of skills that should be discussed more in school, college, university. So as women, you know, we should be going to schools, colleges, universities, sharing our stories, coaching, mentoring, kind of being empowered and feeling confident. Within my journey, I didn't always believe in myself, but I always had people that believed in me, from the workplace, from my supervisors to my parents, dad's in the crowd, to people at my uni. Amy Bentley's in the crowd, massive supporter of me when I didn't quite believe in myself. So I think, like you said, bringing those skills and teaching people, you know, this is how you network, this is the value of networking. And also, you know, this is why groups should be diverse. Having people from different backgrounds provides kind of diversity of thought, great collaboration, and great ideas are sparked. And I think young people are the future leaders. They are the next generation of leaders. So it's really important that they understand now from the get-go the importance of having a diverse group of people, and a diverse group of people sat at that table making the decisions and the steps forward. I think we need to instill that in the younger generation now, so that we don't have to necessarily always advocate for when, you know, there are those people in senior positions.
Good point. And with that, it just reminded me, as I'm going through, like, we're in our younger careers, how do you, maybe you have been through your career a bit more, like, imposter syndrome is very real. Everyone has it, right? So we're in our early careers, and potentially we have opportunities, or we're working on, as people work their way up corporate ladder, being a woman is that additional factor, because it's imposter syndrome. Like, is it a tick box thing, or how does it work? So what advice would you give to someone who's going through that, or like any advice that you've used yourself to like tackle imposter syndrome?
So, imposter syndrome or imposter phenomenon, is rife across every organisation, and it's almost like in women, it's like your starting block.
Yeah.
You start off with imposter syndrome, and then you spend your career trying to sort of get rid of that sort of feeling that you have. In our business, we have a coach that comes in, and that imposter syndrome is in men and women, but worse in women. And there are techniques that you can adopt, but if you feel you have that, then organisations have a duty of care to their employees. And if it's like in our organisation, it's people first, family first. Mothers with sort of you have to give them flexible working, but where you can clearly see that somebody's talented, but it's their own imposter syndrome that's holding them back, then it's really the duty of their line manager to recognise that and support them through coaching and mentoring to help them combat that and just break some barriers. Mm-hmm. It's about breaking the barrier for imposter syndrome, and I think once you've cracked and broken the barrier, then quite often your career will flourish.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
We've introduced something this year called the Tree of Joy. Stick with me on this one and I'll explain it a bit more. But what we get is for our team members to nominate their colleagues and there's no limit to the number of nominations, and we encourage them to just spot them doing something brilliant and to put it down on a little bit of paper, and then it goes into a box. And then at the end of the month, I go through and pick a winner or two, or however many, whoever's got the most nominations basically, and then they go to the Tree of Joy. I spent a lot of time in Hobbycraft. The Tree of Joy has little kind of test tubes hanging off of it with coloured paper, and they get to go into a test tube, pull out a number. That number relates to an envelope, and in that envelope is a prize that they can win. And it has really transformed our feeling of kind of recognition.
Yeah.
And we do it all the time, don't we? The little things that you think, oh, no one noticed me doing that. No one noticed me to take the tea towels home that weekend and wash them. But actually we did notice, and your colleagues noticed, and it's made a difference. And I'd recommend anyone, look at some kind of recognition scheme.
Absolutely taking that one.
Tree of Joy, wonderful. Okay, there we go. You can send us your photos and we'll all share our trees of joy.
Tag her on LinkedIn.
So the City and Guilds floor is going to have a Tree of Joy. So definitely love that. So just remind me of the question, because I got so taken up with the Tree of Joy.
Imposter syndrome.
Imposter syndrome. So, look, I still have it.
Yeah.
And I think it goes really deep back to how you felt in class. I'm also partially sighted. I remember going to school with patches over my eyes, and there is such a lot that goes on in your childhood that you hold on to. And I think no matter how much you achieve, and I always have pushed myself to, there's a bit of, and for me, it's always that bit of prove you're good enough. That's why I think I do. I'm on 2 non-exec boards. I'm an exec director in my day job. I would just think, well, why do I keep amassing more responsibilities? And how do you someone said to me once, try and harness it, because if you listen to that inside voice that says you're not good enough, and if you use that to remind yourself, that means you'll over-prepare. That means maybe you'll be a bit incessant in making sure you know what you're going into, and that can make you a bit annoying to work with. Rebecca's in the room. She can vouch for I can be very annoying to work with. But it comes from always wanting to go, can I be my best? Can I be my best? Can I be my best? And when channeled properly, and you do have to watch it because it can also, like I say, make you a bit annoying, particularly if you're in a leadership role, it can be that thing that means you are more prepared, you are ready to go, you will do your best, as I say. So I think it's about harnessing, and everyone will have their own way, but recognising it is really important, because I'm not sure I recognised it until quite late in my career. Yeah. And it's definitely linked to my childhood and my background. There is no doubt in my mind that it is. So I think that's a thing to call out, and research studies, as I say women often suffer from it. So it's not if you're from an ethnic minority or you grew up in a deprived community like I did, actually more of us have it than we think. I think you're right, it's a phenomenon. Yeah. And we need to be able to harness it for more positive change.
For sure. Amazing. I'm very conscious of time we have to close after this, but I know Christina
yes, I'll be really, really
Don't
quick.
worry. No,
all I will say is community.
Yeah.
So leveraging those communities. In our company, we have ERGs, so employee resource groups, for all sorts of different things. So being in touch with that network and that community. And I'd say speaking up and having these discussions, having these conversations, being transparent, because it might be the first time that, you know, somebody's thinking, oh, actually, I relate to that. I didn't know everybody else did. I wasn't sure everybody else did. When I started, I was just turned 18, went into a lab because of COVID, didn't do any lab work in sixth form, literally got there, had no idea what was going on. Everybody else around me had a PhD. I was very much like, whoa, what is going on? And I can't touch anything because I'll mess everything up. But you just need to take a step back. I realised I just need to take a step back and trust the process and think, in 4 years, I'll be a bit closer to what those people are, and allow them to support and mentor me. But I think having transparent discussions and being part of that community is really important when it comes to imposter syndrome.
Amazing, thank you. Give it up for our panel, people. Thank you very much. Thank you.